January 1907, in the northern reaches of Ontario, near a logging settlement called Black Alder Crossing. A 28-year-old woman named Eliza Morcant was told she had 14 days to vacate the land her husband had died on. The order came from the timber company, not from family, not from neighbors, from men who owned paper more than they owned soil. They said the land had been leased to her husband under contract. They said the contract ended with his life. They said she had no legal standing, no labor value, no reason to remain. Winter was already there, not approaching, not threatening, present. The river had frozen solid, the trees cracked at night, and the temperature had begun to fall below zero without returning. Most assumed she would leave, head south, find work in a town, disappear into someone else's structure, because that is what people did when they lost everything. They moved toward something already built. Eliza did not. She stayed. The property sat at the edge of a clearing carved years earlier for logging. A rough cabin, a narrow woodshed, a collapsed lean-to, and behind it, dense forest that swallowed sound. Her husband, Daniel Morcant, had died in early November. A falling pine. No warning, no time. The men buried him 2 days later, then left. The company followed with paper a week after. Eliza read it once, then folded it, then set it aside, because paper does not change temperature, and temperature was the only thing that mattered now. She had limited supplies: 30 pounds of flour, a small sack of oats, 2 jars of rendered fat, dried venison hanging from the rafters, and wood. Not enough. Never enough. The woodshed was half full, which meant 2 weeks, 3 if stretched, less if the cold deepened, and it was deepening. She understood something simple. The cabin would not hold, not through January, not through what was coming. Wood walls leaked heat. Fire demanded fuel. Fuel would run out, and when it did, everything else would follow. She had seen it before, not here, further north, years earlier, before marriage, before this land. Her father had been a surveyor, a man who mapped land that did not care about being mapped. He had taken her with him once during a winter season. They had camped beneath ground level, not by choice, by necessity. A storm had collapsed their shelter, and he had done something she never forgot. He dug. Not wide, not deep at first, just enough. Then more, until the wind disappeared, until the cold softened, until the ground itself became barrier instead of enemy. He told her something then. Above ground, the air belongs to winter. Below it, the earth belongs to itself. She had not needed that knowledge until now. She stepped into the woodshed, looked at the floor, old planks, gaps between them, enough space to begin. She did not hesitate, because hesitation cost time, and time in winter converts directly into risk. She began digging that same afternoon. The ground resisted, frozen near the surface, hard, unforgiving. But below that layer, it changed. Dense, cold, but workable. She broke through the top layer with an axe, then used a spade, then her hands. Bucket by bucket, soil removed, carried into the trees, spread thin, hidden. Not for secrecy, for practicality. She did not want a mound that trapped wind or drew attention. By the 3rd day, the hole reached 2 feet. By the 5th, nearly 4. Her hands split, knuckles raw, fingers stiff. She wrapped them in cloth, kept working, because stopping meant losing progress, and losing progress meant losing the race she was already behind in. She shaped the chamber carefully, not square, not sharp, rounded edges, arched ceiling, because pressure distributes better that way. Even if she did not say it in those terms, she understood it. From watching, from memory, from necessity. By the 9th day, she had carved out a space just large enough, 8 feet long, 5 feet across, just under 5 feet deep at the center. Not comfortable, not spacious, but survivable. She reinforced the ceiling using beams from the collapsed lean-to, dragged them piece by piece, positioned them beneath the shed floor. Not perfect, but sufficient. She tested each one, pressed, waited, listened, because failure above would mean burial below, and burial in winter ends quickly. She cut a hatch into the woodshed floor, 2 feet by 2, hinged with rope and scrap iron. It closed tight, sealed with cloth, because air must move, but not freely, never freely. She built a ventilation shaft, using an old stovepipe she found behind the cabin, bent, rusting, still usable. She angled it upward, through packed earth, out behind a stack of wood, hidden, but functional. Air would enter when needed, exit slowly, enough to breathe, not enough to lose everything. The floor she layered carefully, dry grass first, then old blankets, then furs, everything she had that could trap heat, because ground pulls warmth, unless you interrupt it. She built a small stone chamber along one wall, not large, not obvious, but precise. A place for controlled fire, not to heat air, to heat mass. She selected stones from the riverbank, dense, heavy, capable of holding heat. She stacked them, sealed them with clay, created a cavity, a path for smoke, a way for heat to move through stone before leaving. Not fast, never fast, because fast heat disappears. Slow heat stays. By the time the timber company returned on the 14th day, she was gone. Not physically, but effectively. They knocked on the cabin door, no answer. They entered, cold, empty, no fire, no sign of life. They assumed she had left. They marked the property, and they left. Because winter does not reward prolonged inspection, and they had warmer places to be. That night, Eliza descended into the ground, closed the hatch above her, latched it from below, and lay still, listening. Not to the wind, but to its absence. The temperature outside dropped to -10, then lower. Inside, it held. Not warm, not comfortable, but stable. And stability is the difference between survival and collapse. Above ground, winter intensified. Below ground, it was held at distance. For now. And that was enough. Because survival does not begin with comfort. It begins with not losing everything at once. And Eliza Morcant had just taken the first step in refusing to lose. The first full week passed without anyone seeing her. That was not unusual. In winter, people disappeared into their own walls. They closed doors. They burned wood. They waited. Absence did not raise concern. Not yet. Above the ground, the cabin sat quiet. No smoke, no movement. A structure already beginning to look abandoned. Inside the woodshed, the hatch remained closed. Snow began to gather along its edges. Wind pushed it into corners, sealed gaps, muted sound. Below that layer, Eliza adjusted, not comfortably, not easily, but deliberately. The first problem was moisture. It came from breath, from melting frost, from the earth itself. It gathered on surfaces, turned to dampness, and dampness in cold becomes danger. Not immediately, but steadily. She noticed it on the third night. Condensation along the ceiling beams, a faint wetness in the straw beneath her. She changed her pattern, shorter fires, more frequent ventilation, opening the hatch briefly each morning, letting cold air drop in, forcing warm air out through the pipe. Not enough to chill the space, just enough to dry it. Because dry cold can be managed, wet cold cannot. The second problem was fuel, not for flame, for heat storage. Her system depended on small fires heating stone, not large fires heating air. So she changed how she burned wood. No more thick logs, no more waste, only thin branches, kindling, controlled burns. She would light the chamber, feed it slowly, allow the stones to absorb, then stop, seal it, let the heat remain. She measured time differently now, not by hours, by heat cycles. One burn, 4 hours of warmth. Another burn, another cycle. Sleep in between. Wake when the cold returned. Repeat. It was not restful, but it was effective. Food became the next calculation. She rationed immediately, not out of fear, out of understanding. Winter was not predictable. It did not follow plans. So she ate less, twice a day, small portions, enough to function, not enough to waste. Oats in the morning, venison at night, fat when needed, because fat holds energy, and energy keeps the body producing heat. She melted snow for water, collected it in a small pot, set it near the heated stones, let it thaw slowly, because direct boiling used fuel, and fuel had to last. Days passed, then more. The temperature dropped further, -20, then below. The kind of cold that changes sound, changes movement, changes everything. Above ground, problems began. The first sign was smoke. Too much of it. Cabins burning constantly. Chimneys overworked. Wood disappearing faster than expected. Because cold demands more than people prepare for. Always. A man named Henry Calloway lived a quarter-mile south. He had built his cabin the standard way. Thick logs, chinked seams, central stove. He had prepared well. Or so he believed. 2 cords of wood stacked before winter, enough for 2 months. By the second week of January, half of it was gone. He increased his fires, burned hotter, tried to fight the cold directly, which made the problem worse, because heat rose, escaped, pulled cold air in beneath it. A cycle, constant, unforgiving. He woke every hour, fed the stove, watched the flames, slept in fragments. By the 10th night, he stopped sleeping properly at all. Across the clearing, another cabin had a different problem. The Anders family. 5 people, 2 children. Their chimney cracked. Hairline at first, then wider. Smoke began leaking inside. They tried to patch it. Clay, cloth, anything. It held for a day, then failed. They had to reduce fires to avoid suffocation, which meant accepting cold, which meant layering blankets, staying close, not moving, because movement consumes heat. Stillness preserves it. But stillness cannot last forever. On the 12th day, one of the children developed a fever, not from illness, from exposure, body failing to regulate. They did not say it out loud, but they understood. This winter was not ordinary, and it was not finished. Eliza noticed something different. Silence. Not natural silence. Absence of activity. Fewer distant sounds, less movement through the trees. People conserving, staying inside. burning through what they had. She adjusted again, reduced fire even further, because she saw what was coming. Not by prediction, by pattern. The cold had not peaked. It was building. She reinforced her system, added more insulation to the hatch, packed earth along its edges, sealed gaps, reduced airflow, except when necessary. She checked the ventilation pipe daily, cleared frost buildup, ensured it remained open, because a blocked vent would end everything quickly. She tested air quality constantly, not with tools, with awareness, breathing, watching condensation, sensing changes. Because underground survival depends on balance. Too sealed, you suffocate. Too open, you freeze. She maintained that balance carefully, every day, every hour. By the third week, the temperature reached levels the settlement had not seen in years, -35, then lower. Wind returned, not strong, but sharp, cutting, penetrating. Above ground, failure accelerated. Wood supplies dwindled, structures strained. People made mistakes, small ones, deadly ones. A man left his door open too long, lost heat, could not recover it. Another burned green wood, filled his cabin with smoke, collapsed before realizing it. Survival shifted from preparation to endurance, and endurance favors systems over effort. Eliza's system held, because it did not fight the cold. It avoided it, used the earth as barrier, used mass as storage, used small inputs for large results. She burned less wood in 3 weeks than others burned in 5 days, and her temperature remained stable. Not warm, but survivable. That difference mattered, because warmth is comfort, stability is life. One morning, she heard something new. Footsteps, above, slow, uneven, stopping, starting again. Not confident, not purposeful, desperate. She remained still, listened. The steps reached the woodshed, paused. Then a sound, weak, a knock, not strong, not certain, but human. She did not move immediately, because opening the hatch changed everything. It released heat. It exposed her system. It risked losing what she had built. The knock came again, softer, fading. She stood, moved carefully, unlatched the hatch, lifted it slightly. Cold air dropped in instantly, sharp, heavy. She looked up. A man stood there, barely, leaning, eyes unfocused, face pale, frost forming along his beard. It was Henry Calloway. He tried to speak, failed, collapsed to his knees. She made a decision, not emotional, not hesitant, practical. She opened the hatch fully, pulled him down, closed it immediately, sealed it again. The temperature dropped inside, noticeably, but not catastrophically, because the system absorbed the change. Slowly, Henry lay on the ground, shaking, violently. She did not wrap him immediately, did not place him near direct heat, because rapid warming damages. She knew that, from memory, from watching. She placed him near the outer edge, let his body adjust, gradually, gave him small amounts of warm water, not hot, controlled, measured. His breathing stabilized, slowly. His shaking reduced. Time passed, minutes, then longer. Finally he spoke. I ran out. She nodded because explanation was unnecessary. Everyone would run out eventually. That was the nature of winter. He looked around, confusion, disbelief. Where? Below, she said. He touched the ground, the wall, felt the warmth, not heat, warmth steady, unchanging. How long? Long enough? He closed his eyes, not from exhaustion, from realization, because what he had tried to fight, she had avoided entirely, and that difference had saved his life. Above them the cold continued to fall, below them the system held, and now it would be tested further, because one survivor rarely remains alone for long, not in winter, not when others begin to understand that survival is happening somewhere they cannot see, and once that understanding spreads, movement follows, even in the cold, especially in the cold. Henry stayed, not because he asked, because leaving would have killed him. Eliza understood that immediately. Exposure does not forgive recovery attempts. Once the body drops too far, stepping back into the cold is not resilience. It is surrender. So she made space, not by expanding the chamber, that was impossible, but by reorganizing it. She shifted her bedding closer to the wall, moved the stored supplies tighter into one corner, cleared a section near the entrance, because proximity to the hatch meant colder air, and Henry, still unstable, needed gradual exposure, not full warmth, not yet. He watched her work, silently, because silence is what follows survival. The mind takes time to catch up with the body. He drank water, slowly, small amounts. His hands trembled less, but not completely. His skin had that pale, stretched look of someone who had come too close to losing circulation. She checked his fingers, pressed them, watched the color return, slowly, painfully. That was good. Pain meant life. No pain meant something worse. By the second hour, he could sit upright. By the fourth, he spoke again. "They won't make it," he said. Not a question, a statement. Eliza did not answer immediately, because she knew what he meant. The others, the ones still above, burning wood faster than they could replace it, sleeping in cycles, waking to cold they could not control. She finally said, "Some will." He shook his head. "You didn't see it." "No," she said, "but I know it." That was the difference. He had seen failure. She understood structure. One reacts, the other prepares. Outside, the cold intensified, the kind of cold that removes variation. Everything becomes the same, hard, still, unforgiving. Sound travels differently, sharp, distant, carrying farther than it should, and through that stillness, something else began. Movement, not organized, not planned, but inevitable. The Anders family was first, not because they knew, because they ran out. Their chimney had failed completely. They could not burn without filling the space with smoke, so they burned less, then less again, then stopped. The temperature inside dropped steadily, not fast, but constant. That is what kills, not sudden cold, gradual loss. They held for as long as they could, wrapped together, shared body heat, minimized movement. But children cannot regulate like adults, and weakness spreads faster in small bodies. On the fourth night after their fire failed, they left. Not all, just the father. He made the decision. Because staying meant watching something he could not stop, he stepped into the cold, directionless at first, then guided by something simple. Memory. He remembered smoke, days earlier, thin, unusual, coming from behind Eliza's property. He had dismissed it. Everyone had. Now it was the only reference he had. He walked, not steadily, not confidently, but forward. Because forward is the only direction that matters when staying still means death. Above ground, Eliza heard it again. Steps, more than one this time, dragging, uneven. She did not move immediately. She listened, measured distance, counted pauses, because opening the hatch had consequences. Each time, heat escaped. Not all at once, but enough. And recovery took time. Time cost fuel. Fuel had limits. Everything had limits. The steps reached the woodshed, a heavier sound, then a hand on the door, weak, then knocking, not strong, not repeated, a single effort, then nothing. Henry looked at her. He did not speak. But the meaning was clear. She stood, moved to the hatch, paused, because each decision now extended beyond her. It affected two people, possibly more. She opened it. Cold rushed in, stronger this time, more forceful. She lifted herself enough to see. A man lay half inside the shed, collapsed forward, snow packed against his back. His hand still near the door. She climbed out, pulled him in, closed the door behind her, then dragged him to the hatch, lowered him down. Henry shifted to help, not fully recovered, but able. They closed the hatch quickly, sealed it, waited. The temperature dropped, noticeable, more than before, because the system had lost more heat this time, and recovery would take longer. The man did not move. Eliza checked him, breathing, shallow but present, pulse weak, but there. She began the same process, gradual warming, controlled, no sudden heat, no direct exposure, time, always time. Eventually he woke, eyes unfocused, confused. "My family," he said. She looked at him. "Where?" "Cabin. No fire." She understood, without more words. There were others. Not here, still above, still exposed, still losing. Henry spoke quietly. "They won't last." Eliza knew that, but knowing and acting are different things. She had built this space for one. Now it held three, barely. Airflow would change, moisture would increase, heat retention would decrease. Each additional body added warmth, but also risk, oxygen consumption, condensation, space limitation. And yet, leaving them above guaranteed outcome. Bringing them below introduced uncertainty. She calculated, not in numbers, in patterns, in limits, in trade-offs. Then she made another decision, not emotional, not impulsive, deliberate. "You stay," she told Henry. He looked at her. "You can't." "I can." She opened the hatch again. This time she prepared, wrapped herself, covered her face, minimized exposed skin, because time outside would be short. It had to be. She stepped out, closed the hatch behind her. The cold hit immediately. Not like before, sharper, deeper, because now she was adjusted to the relative stability below. Above ground felt worse, always. She moved quickly, toward the direction the man had come from. Tracks were faint, partially filled, but visible enough. She followed them, not far. The cabin stood quiet, no smoke, door partially open. Snow drifted inside. She entered. The cold inside was complete, total, no retained warmth, no residual heat, just absence. Two children, a woman, all alive, barely, wrapped together, movement slow, breathing shallow. She did not waste time. One at a time was impossible. She had to choose. She chose the children first, always, because they lose faster. She lifted the smaller one, wrapped tighter, carried. Back to the woodshed. Every step cost energy, every second exposed. She returned, opened the hatch, passed the child down. Henry received, closed, then back again. Second child, same process, then the woman, last, the heaviest, the slowest, the most difficult. But she brought her, because leaving one breaks everything. They sealed the hatch again. Inside, the space changed immediately. 5 people. Air thickened. Moisture increased. Heat dropped. Not instantly, but noticeably. Eliza adjusted at once, more ventilation, brief openings, short intervals, preventing suffocation, reducing condensation. She increased burn cycles, smaller, more frequent, maintaining thermal mass, not allowing full cooling. The chamber shifted from survival for one to survival for many, less stable, more demanding, but still functional, because the system scaled, not perfectly, but enough. The children recovered first, small sips of water, gradual warmth, then movement, then awareness. The woman took longer, but she stabilized, eventually. No one spoke much, because energy was limited, and silence conserved it. Above ground, the settlement continued to fail, but now something had changed. Movement had begun. Those who could still move started to search, not randomly, not blindly, but toward the only anomaly in a landscape of failure, the place where survival existed, even if they did not understand how. They understood something simpler. Someone was still alive, and in winter. That is enough reason to walk into the cold, even when the cold has already taken everything else. By the time the fourth group reached the woodshed, Eliza did not open the hatch immediately. She waited, not out of hesitation, out of necessity. The air below had changed. 5 bodies had shifted the balance. Breath thickened the space. Moisture gathered faster. Heat dropped quicker between burn cycles. The system still worked, but it was no longer forgiving. Every addition now required subtraction somewhere else. Less space, less oxygen, less margin. She listened to the sound above. Voices, weak. More than 2. That was the problem. She opened the hatch halfway. Cold poured in, sharp, heavy. She looked up. 3 men, all standing, all desperate, all expecting entry. She made a decision, not explained, not debated. 2, she said. They stared at her, confused, then angry, then afraid. "You'll all die out there," one said. "Not all," she replied. That was the truth. Harsh, precise, accurate. Systems have limits. Ignoring them does not expand them. It destroys them. 2 came down. 1 stayed. Not by force, by silence, because he understood. Some do. He closed the hatch behind them, and the balance below shifted again. 7 bodies. The space felt smaller, air heavier, heat thinner, but still present, still holding. Eliza increased ventilation intervals, short, frequent, measured. She reduced individual warmth, moved people closer, shared heat, distributed resources. No one comfortable, everyone alive. Above ground, the storm began to break, not suddenly, gradually. Wind softened, temperature lifted, still below 0, but no longer lethal within minutes, within hours. The difference mattered because survival expanded with it. Time returned, movement returned, choice returned. On the second morning after the last arrival, light filtered differently through the cracks above, softer, less violent. Eliza noticed. She always noticed. She opened the hatch, slowly. Cold entered, but it was different, not as sharp, not as deep. She climbed out, looked across the clearing. Smoke, thin, distant, returning. The storm had ended, not winter, but the worst of it. Below, the others waited, silent, watching. She looked down at them, said one thing, "You can go." Not all moved immediately, because leaving warmth, even limited warmth, is difficult. But they understood. The system had carried them through the worst. Now they had to carry themselves. One by one, they climbed out. Stiff, weak, alive. Henry stayed last. He looked at the chamber, at the walls, at the ground that had held everything together. "You built this alone," he said. Eliza nodded. He paused, then said, "You saved them." She shook her head slightly. "No," she said, "I built something that works." That was the difference. Not heroism, not luck, structure, understanding, application. Above ground, the settlement would recover slowly. Wood would be cut again, cabins repaired, stories told. But one thing would remain, a shift, subtle, permanent, because they had seen something they could not unsee, that survival was not always louder, not always bigger, not always above ground. Sometimes it was quiet, buried, measured, and built by someone who refused to fight winter and chose instead to step outside of it,